clean up the criminality. So if you want, I have time if you have questions. But I think when I came here 4 years ago, it was Movember time. And I was trying to do Movember, and I explained that to you guys, because you could maybe see something the people at the back couldn't see it. I was trying Movember. I decided since that year that I would only be a sponsor for Movember. And so I've been a very good sponsor, but there's no way I'm trying that again. Anybody have a question? Are we good?
We've got 2 wireless mics here. Tom, can I get you to take that side of the room? And certainly it's been a hot topic, and this is your opportunity. Is there anyone?
So remember when I came, I think Council's question when I presented is, they had a few of them, but one that stuck with me is, do you plan to knock any portion of the building down? The answer was no, we haven't, we've added to it. And I said, I'll try and create 150 jobs if you guys let us come here. And so I think, for sure we have 800 people, but apparently it's crept up over that. We have over 2,000 people in the company because they're all over the place. And they're good jobs, right? When the minimum wage thing came in, it didn't affect us at all. We don't, we don't dial it in on that basis at all.
As part of your innovative approach, did you bring samples today by any chance?
Usually I get you as my third question. And, usually I usually present while you're having lunch, and my answer is, yes, I did. It was in your lunch. Enjoy your afternoon.
Well, thank you for an exceptional presentation and, quite honestly, an extraordinary story. If I could ask you a question, though, of perhaps the unintended consequences that are out there, and I'm sure you are dealing with them with your colleagues, but I'm involved with a voluntary group at the Hotel Dieu in Kingston for the early intervention for the prevention of psychosis.
Yeah.
And obviously, that's the shadow in the room as you go forward with all of the benefits that I'm sure are going to accrue. So could you talk a bit about that?
Yeah, so we're actually funding studies because there's, when they reference studies on cause-effect, if you actually look into it, like for example, I think it's a terrible idea for children to have access at any age. Maybe 19 is the right age, maybe it's too young, too old. But the study they reference, I think, might be one of the weakest studies in the history of studies that they use to say that's an answer. And as far as psychosis and onset of schizophrenia and things like that, I don't think there's actually been a study that's proper because it doesn't have any relationship to causing it, or when you're unencumbered, do you represent and present? And so I think what we're going to probably find is whether or not it's a trigger is very unlikely, whether or not when you actually are not withholding your symptoms. And in a lot of countries, they'll say, well, we have a very limited mental illness issue. You know, it's because in some of those countries, you're not allowed out of the house, right? Like, so I think what we're going to see is a baseline study. The worst problem we can have in society is anything people get that comes through a criminal supply chain may or may not be adulterated. So does the study or the view of what caused people, was it because it was mixed with other who knows what? Did they have chemicals on it in order to make it grow that contributed to something? So I think we'll see a baseline and comparator, and I'm not particularly concerned we're going to be viewed as a trigger, but probably more like data is better. And even things like opioids. We have a $2.5 million study on how to get people off of opioids. And it's because they need an off-ramp, and in cannabinoids compared to opioids, you'll take that 100 out of 100 times, and you'll start moving people down a progression. But we have 15 trials that we've designed, 2 that have been approved. All the ingredients have been viewed as stabilized and ready to go, one's with animals and one's with human. So we're going to be dropping a lot of trials on things like that, on things like, if cannabis can cause you to have the munchies, right? It's a kind of a joke about it. That means it generates an appetite, which is really hard to make humans hungry. So we're working on how you play with that in an oncology co-treatment, so you actually have multiple delivery mechanisms, so you actually generate an appetite through a period when you don't have one.
It just made me
But if you
really
think
sick.
about it, if I can make you hungry, why can't I make you not hungry?
A THC pill.
And so there's going to be studies that look at if you can play with the cannabinoid system and make someone hungry, why couldn't you actually become an appetite suppressant? And I suspect in society, probably our single biggest health risk is being too hungry. So I think this is just the beginning. Probably over the next 7-10 years, the data will point in directions we can't even contemplate.
Cormier from the Old Town Council BIA, Business Improvement Area, and my colleague Stephen here. Fascinated by the disruptive technology idea, but particularly the local improvement, the local effect of having billions of dollars thrown into a community. And they're not all in one community, but the effect is dramatic. So have you thought through how municipalities are going to grow, and have you had any conversations with the municipal people and that kind of thing?
Yeah, so I think His Worship Sean is here. I don't know how many times we've had them in there looking at what we're doing. We try to keep them up to speed, but really what we need, we kind of have now, right? We need water and power. And then after that, we need places where people can live. So when I jokingly call it the Greater Smiths Falls area, it's because if you move to Smiths Falls, it could be over to here and out as far as Carlton Place. And so we like a large catchment area, and it makes it easier. You don't put too much pressure on one point. And what's turned out to be the case with cannabis is the best places to produce it are communities where somebody's left an empty grape building. And there's a higher than average unemployment rate where people want hand-on-hand training for jobs. Because then we get the building at a low cost, and the purpose of the building when it's an indoor grow is simply to keep the rain off us and security. Everything else in there you have to build. And so really where we've landed almost always is where they want economic development. And you know what? That's a global thing. So like right now when we're in the process to see whether or not we produce cannabis sometime in the future in Germany, it's not going to be in Frankfurt, it's going to be in East Germany. And like East Germany has a lot of things that we know about, but like they lost 22,000 jobs in East Germany because West Germany said we're going to quit using coal and get green. That almost entirely and totally landed on the heads of East German workers, 22,000. So add that to all the other challenges. When you go to East Germany, there's tons of empty buildings. It's because a whole bunch of harebrained schemes built new buildings and they made solar panels for 2 years and left or whatever. So I think that we're going to find that where we land has a lot of appetite for growth, and we don't really need too much from the municipality except to make it better, meaning more other businesses. And so like in Smiths Falls, I have no clue how coffee culture closed, because for sure our people spend thousands of bucks a week at that place. But there's a bunch that own them. And we have, who's been to Say Tout? It's hilarious, right? Like, it's a French-named restaurant in Smiths Falls. That off the top kind of caught me off guard. And then they sell $6 cold-pressed juice, which I've never purchased because it's $6. But they actually sell them. And she's killing it. That kind of stuff happens when there's customers. And so I think our job is mainly to be a really good customer to the municipality.
Thanks. My question is about travel, and I wonder if you could speculate what we might anticipate. And there's two angles I'm thinking about, which is Canadians' use of medical cannabis and the implications right now that they can't perhaps travel abroad like they used to. And secondly, tourism. People will come to Smiths Falls for the boat, they'll come to the Rideau, and they'll be at the worldwide headquarters of this amazing company, and they might like to take product to them someday. So what do you see going on in the future with respect to travel?
So one thing that Canada does really, really badly is regulate our capital markets. So we do not have a federal regulator of capital markets like in the US. They have the SEC, the Securities Exchange Commission, and nobody crosses it because you go to jail. In Canada, we have all these provincial ones, and if you can't get away with it in Ontario, go to BC, they might like it. And so I give you that in that the newspaper has kind of got it half right. There are some people, when they get to the border, have a problem for crossing, not even as a patient, just people who invested, because they invest in these companies that can't get money in the US because it's illegal in the US. It doesn't matter what the state does, it's federally illegal. So they come up to Canada. They list on what's called the CSE, and they get tens of millions of dollars, and they take it back across the border and deploy it doing what's federally illegal. And if you as a shareholder didn't read the prospectus that says it's federally illegal, and they write that in there, you wouldn't know, and you bought their stock. And so a bunch of people have been blogging about how much money they're making when they buy these stocks, which, if something's federally illegal, often you will make a lot of money on it. Get to the border, and they've been stopped. We don't do anything federally illegal. So when I get to the border, I almost always wear my tweed shirt. and I disclose exactly who I am and what I'm about. And the reason is the job of a border person is kind of like a sniffer dog. And if you don't come through transparently, you have a problem. As far as patients go, there is going to be, until it's federally legal in the US, that's the primary thing, you can't cross the border and have medicines from here which are federally illegal there. And you can have a variety of things land in that way, but it is a border thing. So my mom became a patient when she contracted C. difficile, and she spent a year getting smaller and skinnier and more and more anxious and sleeping worse and worse, and she tried a bunch of stuff until finally she became a patient for sleep. Now my dad complains that she sleeps and she snores, but she sleeps really well, and so she's uncomfortable traveling for a variety of reasons, but she doesn't want to go to Florida this winter because she doesn't want to not sleep. So that's a regrettable circumstance. She doesn't want to use Ambien and these sorts of things. So I think that's kind of where it goes. As far as tourism, for sure you're going to have tourism. I think that people are so curious about this topic from around the world, so don't think of just somebody south of the border saying, how do we get more Germans here? How do we get more Brits here? And it's because they actually come to the world headquarters, go for a tour, probably buy some cannabis, probably walk around, check out the boat. But I think we can actually really put a lot of crank on the tourism inbound.
Speaking of tourism, Blair?
Yeah. Hi, Bruce. Congratulations on being on the cutting edge of creating a whole new industry. On that note, the great news is it is a new industry and federally regulated. I'd be interested in your comments about how you've had to navigate and manage the ever-changing rules and regulations by province. And then the other comment, I'd be interested in your comment about U.S. legalization and what impact that might have in terms of running your business, competition, that type of thing.
So we kind of predicted, the provincial thing is a Canadian thing, right? Like everybody's got their own half twist. So part of the reason about 4 years ago, we started 3 years ago, trying to have it spread out was logistics. And greenhouses in lower British Columbia are actually the best place to have a greenhouse, even though we also have them in Quebec and Ontario. The ones in BC are better. The ocean has a very good overnight moderating effect on temperature. So, we started doing this provincial thing, and then we got big, and that's why every province picked us. The biggest headache so far has been the stores, which I mentioned. And every province's excise sticker is different, has to be. So we have this warehouse full of stuff, but we can't put anybody's stickers on it and ship it to them until we get the order. So PEI fires an order, okay, we put that on, put their stickers on, and out it goes. And that's okay if you actually don't keep getting orders every few minutes. Because then you could run something all day for Alberta, and the throughput's 3 times more in one day than if you keep switching which stickers and who's getting what. So we're sort of getting up to speed on it, but it's been a real headache, because you want to go fast. The rest of it, you know what, Prohibition was around for almost 100 years. The fact that it actually is kind of mostly working with a bunch of glitches to work out is unbelievable. Because it's only been 3 years since Trudeau said he's going to do it. And it's only been about a year and a bit since the provinces agreed how they're going to do it. And for the most part, the rest of the world looks at us and goes, wow, how did you actually even do that? And because we're Canadians, we go, oh my God, I should have been better this way, better that way. And I probably had 45 interviews with, so what went wrong that we're running low on cannabis? I'm like, well, I think like 95 years ago, somebody prohibited it. And if you stand in line for 95 years, you're probably going to buy a lot. It's not super tricky. The weirdest part is like, I got a bunch of emails from people on the night of the first night of sales who were in Ontario. And they would send me an email saying, look, I'm order 42,829. And I was like, that's cool, but you're also like my parents' friend and you just bought weed. And they bought everything. Like it was unbelievable how many people bought it. It was because the media has been, there has never been a longer media cycle on anything in Canada. Like the Globe and Mail, Bloomberg, BNN, they all have marijuana reporters. Their only job is to get stories every day on marijuana. New York Times,